Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. A few years ago, I added the image here to my collection. You can see the clean shaven young officer, a lieutenant. If you follow down his body, you'll see he's holding a hat in one hand, and the other arm, the sleeve, is empty. The empty sleeve is something of a theme during the war. It was the subject of a speech by General Oliver Otis Howard that led to a poem and led to a song and became a popular theme throughout the war to help folks who suffered such injuries recover from their grief, and also the families who needed to deal with a disabled veteran in the house. And so this soldier is an example, a textbook example of the empty sleeve. Flash forward to today, those of you who watch these videos will notice that I'm in a different background. I'm traveling on magazine business, working on a story for the winter issue. And part of this visit included the opportunity to add some images to my own collection. And I was shown two images that I immediately needed to have because it's the officer pictured here. And I've got them. I haven't had a chance to scan them yet. So you're going to see the originals, at least the originals on video. Here's the first one. Let me come in close so you can have a look here. The officer is seated here. You can see he wants us to see the empty sleeve. It's hanging straight down towards the edge of the photograph. And for all practical purposes, he looks perfectly relaxed and perfectly healthy. He's got a friend, perhaps a brother, another veteran out of uniform. We don't know, but they're posed together for this image. So that's the first image. There's a second image that I want to share with you. Oh, by the way, I should mention that this image is a carte de visite, or a visiting card, which is about the size of a baseball card. It was an import from France. We gave them their own name, the card photograph, or sometimes we also called it by the French name carte de visite for visiting card. That's the first image. And by the way, this image that had been in my collection is also a carte de visite. The other image is a cabinet card, which is roughly 4 by 6 inches, and you can see it here. It happens to be in a rather ornate frame, and this is a copy print. The photograph is the bust shot was taken during the war, and then later on, the cabinet card size, which had become popular beginning in the late 1860s and really became popular in the 1870s and the 1880s. So this is a copy print for a family member, perhaps a veteran, a comrade, something like that. So now I have 3 images of the same officer in my collection. See if I can get them all here for you. There they all lined up together. So that in itself is super exciting to be able to bring all 3 of these images back together. Now, here's the twist. I actually know who this officer is because this particular photograph was identified. His name is Jacob Zug, Z-U-G, and he served in the 36th Pennsylvania Infantry. This regiment, the 36th, had much to be proud of during the early part of the fight, the Battle of Fredericksburg on December 13th, 1862. As part of the fighting, one of those early attacks, an assault against rebel General James Longstreet's corps, the Pennsylvanians took more than 100 prisoners and seized the colors of the 19th Georgia Infantry. The hard-won gains early on, however, were lost before the battle ended, and with it came many casualties. Among the wounded, First Lieutenant Jacob Thompson Zug. Company H. Rebel shot shattered the lower third of his right arm as he led a charge with his company. That same day, a surgeon examined the wound and determined that the arm could not be saved, and took out a surgical saw and amputated the mangled limb, the lower part of it, and made him as comfortable as possible so that the healing process could begin. Now, it's important to note that lower arm amputations were somewhat lethal. 1 in 5 did not recover, so his chances of recovery were good. And in fact, he did survive. He was a peacetime clerk before he joined the Army, a peacetime clerk in a hardware store in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. In early 1861, May of 1861, about a month after the war began, he joined his local militia company, which is called the Cumberland Guards. The Guards became Company H of the 36th. Now, Zug began his service as an orderly sergeant, and apparently was a role for which he was well suited. He was highly competent, he was capable, and he had a gift for conversation. Apparently, the men held him in high regard. In his role as orderly sergeant, he performed well and got a promotion. In January of 1862, less than a year after he joined the Army, he advanced to second lieutenant of his company. He was leading in this capacity during the regiment's first major campaign, and that occurred during the peninsula in Virginia. And that peninsula campaign ended for Zug on June 27th, 1862, when Confederates captured him at Gaines' Mill. He was in prison not too long, but any prison sentence is going to be a long time. He managed to be there for 6 weeks before he was exchanged for an officer of equal rank, a second lieutenant in the 16th North Carolina Infantry. Zug returned to the 36th in time to fight at South Mountain and Antietam, emerging unscathed from both battles and performing quite well. He earned his first lieutenant's bars as a result. 2 months later at Fredericksburg, he suffered his debilitating wound that resulted in the amputation. As I mentioned earlier, he survived the amputation and received a discharge in June of 1863. He went on, and that's a month before the Battle of Gettysburg. He made his home in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and went into business. Everything he touched seemed to turn to gold: a bank, a gas and water utility, a manufacturing company, a printing firm, and an insurance company. He did quite well. However, consumption visited him, and he was in the prime of life and business success. His health failed, and consumption took his life in 1883 at the relatively young age of only 44. I have a hunch that this cabinet card that I showed you earlier may have been made about that time as a memorial to his life and services and his business success. Perhaps it was made for his wife and the 3 children he left behind. Townspeople and the family mourned his loss. A local newspaper wrote a long obituary, including a list of his accomplishments, and it noted at the end, he was a truly good man of sterling worth and a kind and good friend. So there you have the story and 3 images of Jacob Zug of the 36th Pennsylvania Infantry. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.